1 second. e4 c6, let's play Karukan defense. Okay, now I can read only the chart. Okay, Karukan defense, e4 c6, e4 c6, d4 d5, after e4 c6, d4 d5, let's play knight d2, e4 c6, d4 d5, knight d2, de4, knight takes e4, knight d7, bishop d3, bishop d3, knight g f6, knight takes f6, knight takes f6, knight takes f6, play c3, protect pawn d4, okay, e4, e4 c6, d4 d5, knight d2, de4, knight e4, knight d7, bishop d3, knight f6, knight takes f6, knight takes f6, c3, bishop g4, make attack on queen d1. You can play knight e2 or queen c2. Let's play queen c2. Queen c2, e6, open the diagonal for bishop f8. I want to play knight e2, then short castle. Let's play knight e2. Try to make short castle. Black have knight f6 and bishop g4, pawn structure, h7, g7, f7, e6, c6, b7, e7, queen d8, rook e8, rook h8, king e8. Trade knights, pawn structure of white, e2, b2, c3, d4, f2, g2, h2, pieces, queen c2, bishop d3, knight e2, bishop c1, rook e1, rook h1, king e1. Take your time and find the best move. Let's go. Play Karukan defense. Karukan defense with knight d7 after e4, c6, d4, d5, knight d2, takes, and knight d7. Knight d7, Karpov variation. After knight d7, I play bishop d3, knight f6, takes, knight takes f6, knight takes f6, c3, protect pawn d4, bishop g4, queen c2, e6, knight e2. Now black to move. Make 2 hours. Hampov has been streaming for 2 hours. Let's go. Play against 2098 from Poland. Strong player. If I win this game, I win 29 points. e4 c6, d4 d5, knight d2, de4, knight e4, knight d7, bishop d3, knight f6, knight f6, knight f6, c3, bishop g4, queen c2, e6, knight e2. Let's go. Karukan defense, Karpov variation. Now we can play bishop e7, followed by short castle. We can make short castle, then bishop e2, bishop put the bishop on e3. Okay, bishop come back to h5. Bishop h5, lose tempo, let's make short castle. Bishop h5, short castle, bishop g6. Understand the last move, why he put the bishop on g6, he make attack on bishop d3, but bishop d3 protected by queen c2. We can develop another piece. Also we can take on g6 with bishop takes g6. If he takes with h pawn, we can put the bishop on f4 or bishop g5, pin knight f6. Bishop g6 takes with h pawn, open h file, make attack on h2, then bishop f4. Takes, we can play knight f4, bishop f4, let's take on g6, then play bishop f4, develop bishop c1. Now pawn structure of black, he push e6, pawn e6, f7, g7 and takes with h pawn. So g6, g7, f7, e6, c6, b7, e7, knight on f6, bishop on f8, rook on h8, queen d8, king e8, and rook e8. White, queen c2, bishop d3, queen c2, okay, rook e1, queen c2, knight e2, bishop f4, king g1, rook f1. Pawn structure of white, e2, b2, c3, d4, f2, g2, and h2. Now we put the bishop on d6, want to trade bishop, no problem, bishop protected by rook. We can try rook f, e1, rook f, e1. Put the rook same file with king. If bishop takes d4, can takes with knight. Pawn structure h2, g2, f2, d4, c3, e2, b2, block, e7, b7, c6, g6, f7, e6. Pieces of white, queen c2, bishop f4, knight e2, rook e1, king g1, and rook e1. Block bishop d6, knight f6, queen d8, rook e8, rook h8, and king e8. Take your time and find the best move. Let's go. We protect bishop f4 with knight e2. If bishop f4 can take on f4 with knight, we control now rook e1, we play rook e1, control e5. If we play queen c7, try to make long castle, we can push e4, e4, e5, destroy pawn structure on the queen side. e4 c6 d4 d5 knight d2 de4 knight e4 knight d7 Caro-Kann defense Karpov variation bishop d3 knight gf6 knight takes f6 check knight takes f6 c3 protect pawn d4 bishop g4 make attack on queen d1 protect the queen with queen c2 push e6 knight e2 bishop h5 short castle bishop g6 bishop takes g6 h takes g6 open h5 for rook h8 play bishop f4 bishop d6 rook f e1 and now black to move. Put the knight on d5 knight d5 make attack with two pieces on bishop f4 bishop d6 and knight d5 make attack two pieces on bishop f4 bishop f4 protected by only one piece knight e2. So if I take on let's take on d6 take on d6 queen d6 pawn h2 attacked by queen and rook takes and play knight g3 bishop d6 queen d6 and put the knight on g3 blockade h5 queen can take on h2 with queen and rook. Don't forget, my friends, follow the channel and subscribe if you like the stream. Thanks. If you enjoyed the stream at chess, my best advice to improve your chess skills by reading chess books, chess books rook and game, pawn and game, bishop and knight against rook, rook against two bishop. Watch or analyze chess games of grandmasters like by Arikhin Misak, chess book 103, world class matches, winning chess minute game by Ivan Sokolov, talk about pawn structure, and chess books of Yuri Aberbach. Also can learn chess by chess book of Bobby Fischer teaches chess. Now we make long castle. Okay, knight g3, long castle. Time to make it long castle against short castle. Let's push e4 now. Okay, let's take time. Queen d6, rook d8, queen d6, rook d8, king c8, rook h8, knight d5, queen c2, knight g3, rook e1, rook h1, and king g1, pawn structure h2, g2, f2, d4 c3, d4 c3, b2 e2. We make long castle. If I push c4 now, make attack on knight d5, we can jump to b4 or jump to f4. Let's try c4, but c4 with the pawn on d4. You can play knight b4, threat knight c2, or queen takes d4. Can we try c4, knight b4, then queen b3? If you push c5, dc5, queen c5, e3, knight c6. Let's try c4 now. c4 come back, knight can come back to f7 or b6. Then we can play rook a d1, control d5 with rook d1 and control e5 with rook e1. Then we can play, after c4 we can play e3 b4, prevent queen d4. Okay, rook h8, control h5, knight g3, blockade diagonal of queen d6, prevent queen takes h2, checkmate. The knight tricky piece, he can jump to f4, but no threat with knight f4. If knight f4, rook a d1 or push b4. Rook a d1 protect pawn d4. Now you move the knight, pawn d4 not protected, queen on c5, queen c2, and rook on e1. If knight b6, rook a d1. If knight c7, knight c7 or knight b6, or knight e7, or knight f4, rook a d1. I want to protect pawn d4 with rook d1 and prevent queen takes d4. You can jump with knight b6, make attack on pawn c4. Knight b6, you can play c5, fork the queen on d6 and fork the knight on b6. So knight f7, knight c7, or knight e7, or knight f4. Knight f7, rook a d1. Knight c7, same idea, rook a d1. Knight f4, rook a d1. Knight b6, big blunder. Knight b6, c5. Queen c2, king c8, same file. After long castle. White pieces, knight g3, rook e1, queen c2, rook e1, pawn structure, c4 d4, e2 b2, f2 g2 h2, king b1, black, pawn structure of black player, e7 b7 c6, e6 f7, e6 f7 g7 g6, rook h8, knight d5, queen d6, rook d8, and king c8. Now you move the knight, you play knight f4. Knight f4 make attack on pawn g2, pawn g2 protected by the king. Now rook a d1. Rook a d1, no threat. Queen on c2, rook on e1. If you give check, we can take. If you take on h2, no, knight f4, you can. Rook a d1. Protect pawn d4. We have time. Play 15%. In Blindfold chess game, to make the game, to remember the position, always, my friends, in Blindfold chess game, best advice, remember the last position. Don't remember you can remember the game, but remember the last position and understand the last move of black or white player to see the threat, prevent lose material advantage, or prevent get checkmated. Okay, knight b4, rook a d1, protect pawn d4. Now black to move, you play king b8, you put the king on b5. Okay, knight f4, pawn g6, you can push g5, protect f4. Let's try e3 b4, time to start attack on the queen side. e3 b4, have a nice position. e3, pawn d4, pawn d4 protected by rook d1, c4 pawn protected by queen c2. We push e3, next move b4, push. Okay, rook e1, rook d1, queen c2, knight g3, d4 c4, e3 b2, f2 g2 h2, king b1, king b8, rook d8, queen d6, rook e8, knight f4, e7 b7 c6, e6 f7 g7 g6. You put the king on b5. You protect the king with knight g3, two rooks. Pawn structure, maybe if you push the pawn on the king side with g5, g6, g5, g4. Try to make attack. You can remove the knight from g3. You take with h pawn, g7 and g6 to make attack on knight f4. Knight f4 can go to h5, make attack on knight g3. If you take, we can take with f pawn or h pawn and save the game. Maybe knight h5 now. Nice move for black. You play rook h4. Try to double the rook on h5 and threat rook h1 check. You have knight. Maybe rook h4, then knight h5. Oh, you put the rook on h4. Rook h4, my friends. Queen d6, rook d8, rook h4, knight f4, knight g3, queen c2, rook d1, rook e1, d4, d4, c4, e2, b2, rook h4, protect knight f4, e6, f7, g7, g6, king on b8, queen on c2. You protect the knight on f4 with rook and queen. What to do, my friends? Okay, take your time and find the best move. We push e3, try to play b4. Think push b4, b5. Knight g3, control h1, no threat. If you move the knight like knight h5, he threat rook takes d4, attacked by 3 pieces, queen, d6, rook d8, and rook h4, make attack on pawn d4. If I play b4, knight h4, knight h5, then d5, takes. Okay, if you try to take on g3, no problem. If you play knight h5, you can play d5. C takes, we control d5 with e6 and c5. Maybe push. Okay, b4, let's play b4. Pawn structure b4, c4, d4, e3, f2, g2, h2, against c6, b7, e7, e6, f7, g7, and g6. Pieces, knight f4, rook h4, queen d6, rook d8, king b8, king g1, rook e1, rook d1, queen c2. Last move, we push b4. Remove the knight h5, try to take on g3. We protect knight h3 with 2 pawns, but knight h5 threat rook d4. We can sacrifice pawn in the center by push d4, d5. If takes with c pawn, takes with c pawn, e takes. Not a good move, push the pawn. Knight g3, we can blockade with rook e4. If you play knight f4, knight h5, you can play. If I play knight e4, try to make attack on queen d6, you can take with a check on h2 after knight h5. Play rook d h8, you double the rook on h5 and try to take on h2 with tempo with a check. Try to take pawn on h2. The knight on g3, you can come back to f1. Art of defense in chess. Come back with the knight backwards moves. Come back with knight f1, protect h2, but knight f1, not good move. We can play knight f1 and threat g3. Work the knight, but he can protect with the check and come back with rook. If I push h3, he can sacrifice knight takes, rook takes, pawn takes, rook takes h3, threat rook g3 with tempo. If I play rook e1, takes. The knight on f4, I don't like my friends, the knight on f4, I make attack on pawn h2. If I play h3 now, he can sacrifice. Can we push c5? Give me the queen, or d5. Knight f1, let's play h2, no problem. h2, let's go. Queen c2, control f2. Make h2, no problem. If he sacrifice knight, we can put the king on knight h3, gh3, rook h3. We control h1 with knight. Then we can play queen e4. Then push. d5 takes, c takes, rook takes, d5. h2 now blockade h file. Double the rook on h file. Knight on f4. If we try to play g6 to g5 and g4. g6. Okay, if we play g5, if we push g6 to g5, we can play knight e4. Fork the queen on d6 and fork the pawn on g5. Same time we threat g2, g3, fork the knight and the rook. Can give check. King g2. He push g5. Nice, my friend. He push g5. Now knight e4. Knight e4. Make attack on the queen on d6 and pawn g5. Okay, if I play knight e4, knight h3 check, g takes h3. We can put the knight on e4. Knight e4, let's go. Knight e4, fork the queen, fork the pawn. If I push g2, we can take on h3 with a check. Can you see, my friends, the chessboard, green chessboard? Write 1 in chat, my friend Oli. If you see the chessboard, the game, last move we play queen e7. Queen e7, he control g5. Now I think time to push, time to make attack on the king side. I push d2, d5, knight e4, queen e7, push d5. He control d5 with knight f4, pawn e6 and pawn c6. Control. If I push, takes, maybe discover attack. Let's open e file and d file. Control d file and e file with two rooks. Rook e1 and rook d1. Queen on same file with rook e1. Queen on e7. Same file with rook e1. Last move we push d5. If he takes with e pawn or c pawn, e takes d5, c takes d5, c takes d5. If you take with e5, maybe you can make discover attack with knight c2. You have 1 minute. We have chance if you make a blunder, if you didn't have time. But 1 minute, we play 15 plus 10. I have 6 seconds, 6 minutes against 1 minute. You push g4, g5, g4. Pawn structure of white, h2, g2, f2. try to destroy pawn structure of g4, make attack on pawn h3. If I take, rook h1 mate. If I push g3, knight h3 check. Can you protect pawn h2? I have nice idea, my friend. Give him pawn h3. You can play d takes c6. If pawn takes h3, we can push g3, fork the knight and fork the rook. If he gives check, we can go to the corner, pawn h2 of black, protect white king in the corner with two rooks, and we threat win the knight or win the rook. So take on c6. If you take on h3, g3, fork two pieces, push with the check, king go to the corner, and we threat win piece. Take on c6. Take on c6, pawn takes h2, g3, h1, h2. Okay, g3, h2, king h1. No check with the queen, queen on e7, control dark square. Okay, d takes c6. We open the file now with rook, and we threat knight d6 check. Queen, I want to activate the queen. You have two rooks, knight, and pawn g4. Knight on f4. If he takes, g3, b c6, take on c6 with b. Can you activate the knight with the check? Okay, 4 minutes. Take your time and find the best move. Pawn structure of black: e7, c6, g4, g7, f7, e6, knight f4, rook h4, rook h8, queen e7. White pawn structure: e3, b4, c4, e3, b4, c4, f2, g2, h3, king g1, rook e1, rook d1, queen c2, and knight e4. I don't like the pawn on g4, my friends. If I push knight h3 check, and he can sacrifice on f2, threat rook h2. Okay, knight d6 check. Can you try knight d6 check? Then push b5, king c2. Let's go. Knight d6. Okay, wait, my friends. Knight d6, queen e4. Nice move. Knight d6, king c7. Knight b5 takes 6. Knight d7 and queen. Knight d6, king c7 or king b8. Queen can go to e4. Make attack on knight f4. If you take on g3, g3, knight e2, queen e2. Knight d6 check. Then queen e4, make attack on knight f4. If you take g3, h2, king h1, no check, and we activate, we threat win the queen. With queen e4, we threat take the knight or take on c6 with the check. So knight d6. Knight d6 without a check. Why? King not on c8. After long castle, he play king b8. Knight d6 without a check, my friends. Forget king b8. I think I give him check. Knight takes h3, sacrifice. Knight h3 takes, rook h3, knight h3 takes. Okay, not good sacrifice. Takes with the check. Why sacrifice? If I take with pawn, if I take the knight, he take with pawn, threat queen g5. Can we play king f1? King f1, knight f4, and rook h1 mate. G takes knight, rook takes knight, rook takes h3, queen e4, g takes, okay, if he takes with pawn, king h2, just take the knight, no problem, let's go. Now if he takes with rook, queen e4, and if he give check, sacrifice queen for 2 rooks. No time, let's go. Takes with rook, queen e4, control h1, no mate. Red queen c6, no mate, he control e7 with queen e7. Let's go. Move, grandmaster move. King c7 protect pawn c6. Can you play knight f4 or push? I think time to push. b5 takes, queen check, and win the queen. Secure, win the queen. We control d5 with rook. He can take the knight and with red mate. Rook h1, king b2, okay. King b2 can take free 2 rooks. King b2, rook h2, king b3, rook h3, and I lose the queen. So let's take with make pre-move, take 2 rooks with queen, no problem. If queen h4 check, king g1, not king g2. King g2 he can give check. Now he push g3. If I takes, queen takes with the check. Now he threat mate. g3, queen h2, queen f2 mate. fg3, queen g3, king f1, queen f3, queen g3, queen h3, queen g3, queen f3, forced draw by perpetuate check. Okay, draw, no problem. Let's take him. Let's give draw. Takes, and king f1. Give check. Want to make a draw? No problem. 2 rooks and knight against queen, perpetuate check. Blindfold chess game. Let's go. If we take on e3, then knight to check, c5, maybe we have can give tricky move. I want to force a draw, my friends. Not force draw. With 2 rooks and knight, we can make a nice attack. Okay, knight can give check, then knight to check, king b6. Knight to check, king b6, take on c6. Knight e8, king b6. Knight e8, king b6, c5. Knight b8, king b6, c5, king c5. Give me check, king b6, take on c6. Open the file. Open b file. King b6, take on c6. King c6, rook check. King b6, take on c6. Crazy game. If I push now c7, win the game. With rook, promote queen, no check. You can force a draw by king f3, king g1, 2 rooks and knight, pawn on c6. Queen g3, king come back to f1. g5, you want to give mate. Now c7, g4, c7, c7 win the game. Threat promote queen. Also rook d6 can give check. Force draw. Force draw. You give check, but knight protect pawn. f2. Draw, my friend. Draw. Nice game. Let's go to h1. come back, check on f5. Win 12 point, play against strong player, 2092. GG. Forced draw by gift check on h file, g file. Only chance because we push c6, c7. Let's remember the game. Okay, Karkan defense, Karpov variation, e4, c6, d4, d5, knight d2, de4, knight e4, knight d7, bishop d3, knight g f6, knight f6 check, knight takes f6, c3, bishop g4, queen c2, e6, knight e2, bishop h5, short castle, bishop g6, bishop takes g6, h takes g6, bishop f4, bishop d6, rook h1, knight d5, bishop d6, queen d6, knight g3, knight g3, knight g3, or long castle, c4, knight f4, rook a d1, rook h4, e3, double the rook d h8, push h3, protect pawn h2, he plays g5, knight e4, queen e7, d5, then g4, d c6, b c6, knight d6, knight takes h3, g takes h3, rook takes h3, queen e4, king c7, b5, rook check, queen check, rook check, king takes rook, queen h4, king g1, g3, f g3, queen g3, king f1, queen takes e3, knight e8 check, king b6, b takes c6, queen f3, king g1, queen g3, king f1, g5, c7, queen f3, king g1, queen g3, king f1, queen f3, king g1, queen g3, king h1, queen e3, king g1, and draw by perpetual check. I want to put position now, then come back, put the last position. Okay, give me 1 second. Rook d1, rook e1, king g1, knight e8, c7, c4, c7, c4, c7, c4, knight e8, rook e1, rook e1, rook d1, knight e8, c7, c4, king g1, queen g3, g5, f7, e6, e7, and king c6 or king. Okay, after check, push, king on b6 or king on c6, take on c6, king on b6. Okay, this is the last position, my friends. 1 second, put, analyze, then come back, put pieces, white pawn structure, c7. Okay, change, not Blindfold chess game, let's put pieces, pawn of white, c7, c4, knight e8, rook e1, rook d1, king g1, g5, f7, e6, and e7, king on b6, and queen on g3. This is the last position, my friends. Force draw. Let's make picture. Force draw by perpetuate check. Make picture and then come back and see the game. Watch the game. This is the last position. Give me 1 second. Okay, come back to live chess. Come back to live chess, put the last position. Blindfold chess game. Last position, my friends. And now let's take a look at our game. See if I forget pawn. Take on e3. Okay, let's take a look at the game. Yes, let's go, my friends. Queen g3. File h file. Force draw. Pawn structure. g5 f7 e6 e7 c5 c4 knight e8 rook e1 rook d1. When you play like Hampovsky in Blindfold chess game against 2092, force draw. Now let's watch the game. e4 c6 d4 d5 knight d2 takes Karukan with knight d7 Karpov variation. Bishop d3, knight f6, takes with knight c3, protect the queen with queen c2, takes bishop f4, knight g3, c4, knight f4, rook d1, king b1, push. Now we sacrifice knight, takes and play queen e4, stop rook h1, b5, if he take on b5, can threat mate in 2. Check, sacrifice 2 rooks, queen h4, king g1, prevent queen h3 check, g3 takes, give check, take, and now we threat c7, give check, push g5, try to play g4, g3, and queen f2, queen h2 mate, push c7, and now we force to draw. Thank you, my friends, for watching my stream today. I hope you enjoy Blindfold chess game.